Hi, I'm Jeremy Auldaney. I'm a creation science and Bible prophecy researcher, and I've been for many, many years. I'm going to be reading this article here. It's dinosaurs and it's by Brian Thomas, and it's in Back to Genesis, Acts and Facts for July 2017, volume 46, number 7, from the Institute for Creation Research, which was founded by Henry Morris. I knew Henry Morris, and very well, and also I knew his son John Morris, and I knew Dwayne Gish, and Michael Ord, and many others, which I've had personal contact with. In fact, I run into Michael Ord at conferences and meetings, and Dinosaur Dig in Wyoming, and also at the conference there in Minneapolis. Anyway, Brian Thomas wrote this article on dinosaurs and dragon legends. And he has a picture of a dinosaur here. Very hard sometimes to get the picture in the frame there, because the monitor is over here and I can't quite guide it, and I have to look at the monitor, and the sun is so bright I can't hardly see the monitor. But anyway, that's a armored dinosaur. It's one of the best preserved dinosaurs. It says it's known as a nodosaur. It's what you call an ankylosaur, which is an armored dinosaur. It's one with a big club on his tail and armor all over him. One of those, by the way, was found in Carpinteria, California, down near the coast, when you're heading from LA halfway to San Diego. Did I say Carpinteria? No. That's in, it's in Carlsbad, California. There's a little bit of Cretaceous there. Cretaceous is, let's say, Mesozoic strata containing dinosaurs is extremely rare in California, because when the floodwaters occurred, we were right at the edge of the continent, which hadn't divided yet. But we were at the edge of the ocean, and when the continents rose, all the water flowed off the continent all over North America, flowed off through California, and then finally it drained through Wyoming and the Grand Canyon area, clear out to the Gulf of Mexico. But that was post-flood. But right after the flood, when the continents rose, of course, California got scoured, and so it's mostly just granite. And when we do have sedimentary, it's all post-flood. The post-flood in the Tertiary and the Cenozoic. Of course, I don't believe in those periods. This was just a post-flood period. Now, to the article, Dinosaurs and Dragon Legends. And it quotes Job here. Everybody knows about Job, who knows their Bible, where it describes two dinosaurs. Well, actually not dinosaurs. One of them is describing a sauropod dinosaur, one of the largest, and the other one is describing the largest of the marine reptiles. Yeah, it's describing one of the largest of the chronosaur, which is the largest of the marine reptiles, some called plesiosaurs. And this one had a head like a crocodile, and you remember the common plesiosaur that we see, the elasmosaur? This animal could just swallow one of those. It was gigantic. It's almost, I think it was larger than a whale. And so God is showing to Job how great he is by these huge animals, both in the sea and on land. Now, the land animal, I believe, was a seismosaur or a dilophosaur, which is a sauropod, just like the picture here shows. That's a sauropod dinosaur. You can see it there. Here. It's hard to get it in the lens there, so you can see it. That looks like a Diplodocus. It has its nose on the top of its head, so it could go into water and still be able to breathe. How do dinosaurs fit with the Bible's history? They certainly exist. Their fossil remains are found on every continent, and ancient historical records, including the Bible, chronicle human encounters with large reptiles whose description best matches dinosaurs. The interesting thing, a lot of these legends of dragons often describe them as having large teeth, stumpy hands, claws, and horns, and other things, like Gilgamesh met in the forest. And the description sounds a lot like a Carnotaurus, which, when you look at the Carnotaurus, it looks like the face of a devil. Now, of course, these legends interpreted that this animal could talk, and it was kind of a humanoid. Well, sauropod dinosaurs like the T-Rex are kind of humanoid. They do walk upright just like men do. And by the way, no other reptile walks upright. All reptiles are either like snakes that crawl on the ground, or else they're tetrapod, where their legs are splayed out, and they walk like that, like an alligator. But dinosaurs were different. They walked like mammals and birds. Now, that doesn't mean that they're related to birds any more than they're related to mammals. Could it be that these records show that dinosaurs and humans shared the Earth at one time, rather than living millions of years apart, as evolutionary myth proclaims? Now, that's true. The descriptions of dragons are always that they're reptiles, they have scales, and their descriptions. Why reptiles? Why not some kind of mammal? So it indicates that when people in ancient times were describing dragons, they were actually describing a real animal, like the dragon that's on the gate of ancient Babylon, the city of Nimrod at Babel. And it has on the gates, they have a dragon and an auroch. A dragon and an auroch. An auroch is an ancient cow. It was a wild cow. And it's extinct now, because cows today are bred down to domestication, and they have lost a lot of their characteristics. They're de-evolving, in other words. Dinosaurs certainly appear to be extinct now, seem to be. However, there are lots of reports of Moquelium bembe and others where, at least in historical times, shows that they were alive. And there's also a possibility some of them may be alive today, especially the flying reptiles and the marine reptiles do appear to be still around, but extremely rare. In fact, there could be some animals such as the sauropod and some other dinosaurs that could still be alive. The interesting thing is that the natives talk about a sauropod dinosaur, but they don't recognize theropods and other things. So apparently this is a true story, because they're not just making this up. They're specific of what this animal looks like. Well, there goes a towhee. That's a little brown bird that goes cheep, cheep, and he likes to stay on the ground. He feeds on the ground, and he likes to hide under things. And that one over there just flew by. That was a hummingbird. I feed flocks of birds every day, all kinds, 10 different species. Dinosaurs certainly appear to be extinct now. Those that lived at the time of Noah's globe-covering flood drowned or suffocated, except those on board the ark, as did all land-dwelling animals with nostrils, according to Genesis 7:22. Fast-moving flood mud. Mostly the flood was the fossiliferous strata that became sedimentary rock is mostly started as mud floods. Fast-moving mud quickly buried some of those outside the ark. However, this mud had to be mixed with limestone because it's very similar to cement in order for it to harden very rapidly within hours or days. And I can prove that this didn't happen over millions of years because you get one layer of strata underneath, let's say, at St. George, Utah, where you have all these Dilophosaur tracks that they found in a museum they have there in situ. The upper layer is solid, and when it got turned over, it looked like a dinosaur foot sticking right out of the mud. In fact, he thought it was a mummified dinosaur. It turned out to be a track. But that was solid sandstone, hardened by a lot of silicon, from volcanic ash. But the bottom layer that the tracks are actually in is still mud. It's all soft. And that's why there's no fossils in the bottom layer. Except if there's body fossils, something might be in it. I don't think they found any, though. Usually where they find tracks, sometimes you'll find bones above the track layer. Interesting. That's exactly where you would expect to find them. That's the way it was there at Tuba City when I found the Dilophosaur tracks there. And by the way, St. George area is identical to Tuba City in dinosaur tracks. And that's late Cretaceous, about almost the, no, wait a minute, it's early Jurassic. Yeah, early Jurassic. Because it's right next to the Triassic, which is part of the petrified forest strata, which contains Araucarian pines. I have an Araucarian pine right over there, because they became extinct, but I believe they came back they survived in China someplace. The mud layers covered the creatures' dead bodies so deeply that scavengers couldn't reach them, and the mud dried soon after to preserve the remains as fossils, faster than their carcasses could decay. Now that's not exactly true, because this mud had to have been mixed with a cementing agent before it was deposited. Otherwise there wouldn't be a separation between the solid rock and the mud. It would if it seeped in later, the whole thing would be sandstone, not just the upper layer containing the negative impressions of the tracks. By the way, most of the tracks there at St. George are negative. Now in Tuba City, they're the positive side, while the upper layer is the soft layer of volcanic ash was laid down right on top of the tracks there at Tuba City. Most, if not all, dinosaur fossil layers also contain fossil water creatures like fish, clams, in other words, unio clams, fresh water. And this fits the flood explanation for their demise. Now, it isn't all fresh water because I found some gypsum in the petrified forest, and that's the Triassic layers with the Araucarian pines. And there they also found a stingray, which is a marine fish. And the gypsum is an evaporate from the salt water, the salt in the sea, the salty minerals in the sea. So there was an oceanic involvement in this tidal impact that covered Arizona and goes into many other states. In fact, the strata goes all the way to New Jersey, comes all the way into California, known as the Aztec sandstone, with tiny dinosaur tracks, about that size. Dinosaur probably about 4 or 5 inches tall, bipedal. And there was also Coelophysis, which is called Graylator, is what they call the tracks, and they're found there too, in California, at Mountain Pass, near the caverns there. They're across from the caverns. The mud layers covered the creatures' dead bodies deeply that scavengers couldn't reach them, and the mud dried soon after to preserve their remains as fossils, faster than their carcasses could decay. I did some research on the decomposition of dead bodies, and it's kind of a morbid thing, but it's very interesting from a paleontological viewpoint because it shows that anything that dies, you say, well, it gets sealed in and there's no oxygen. But actually, the body starts decomposing from inside out. There are germs inside your body that start multiplying after you die, and you no longer have an immune system. The blood stops flowing, and it stops oxygen. And even with these germs, I learned from research into where they're trying to research to find out when a person was murdered, exactly how long ago it was, and it goes from inside out. And these germs actually, or microbes, actually survive. They're the type that survive without oxygen. In fact, they don't, the oxygen, they don't require oxygen. Most, if not all, dinosaur fossil layers also contain fossil water creatures, like fish and clams. Well, that's true. When I was in Utah hunting with Lynn Ottinger, the discoverer of Moab Man, in a dinosaur layer. Moab Man was actually not at the time of the dinosaurs. He was a very ancient man who was in America, probably the time of the Phoenicians, about the time of the Tower of Babel and the Clovis culture. And there I saw that there were lots of these Unio freshwater clams all around the dinosaur bones. So this is very common, but it's freshwater. But as I said, there is an involvement of marine at the same time. This fits the flood explanation for their demise. Although researchers have named hundreds of dinosaur species, all of them belong to only about 60 distinct families. Actually, I don't think there are that many. There are very few different types of dinosaurs, much less than they claim, because there's splitters and there's lumpers. Now, the evolutionists tend to be splitters because they try to give the illusion of evolution, when in fact they're describing the same animal. Like the Maleosaur, that was one of the very first dinosaurs found. It was a duck-billed dinosaur, plain and simple. Anyway, 60 distinct families. These are roughly equal to the basic dinosaur kinds. Roughly equal to basic dinosaur kinds. This means Noah and his family only had to manage around 120 individual dinosaurs on the ark. Personally, I think it was less than that. Possibly. Could they all fit on board a vessel with dimensions of Genesis 6? No matter how large some dinosaurs grew, the largest dinosaur egg wasn't bigger than a football. Even the Argentinosaurus, that is, which could grow to 120 feet long, could have fit on the ark if a younger and much smaller representative boarded the vessel. Now, of course, he would have chosen small animals, juveniles. In contrast, many dinosaurs were small even when fully grown. For example, the Compsognathus, which is a small dinosaur about the size of a chicken. The average dinosaur size was about the same as a bison. 120-ton bison would require a mere corner of one of the ark's 3 decks, were about the size, actually a little larger than a football field. We can infer from the Genesis record that the descendants of the dinosaurs preserved on the ark traveled from the Middle East to places around the globe because there was only one continent. The Earth hadn't been divided yet until 350 years later at the time of Peleg, when the Earth was divided. This makes sense when considering the unique post-flood climate which changed. Creationists are wrong about this, and I did research on this, because the weather stayed the same, and it was a tropical weather all the way for 350 years, and suddenly it changed. Then the polar ice formed at the poles, and that's when we hit the Ice Age. because it's getting pretty hot. I started a little late because I had a lot of business to do. The Ice Age occurred right after. Wrong. It occurred 350 years after. The flood was approximately 2347 BC and went to 2348 BC 1 year. And then Peleg's division, when the earth was divided, it was divided not only by their language and people scattered with different languages, but also, I should comment that the original language was Hebrew. But when they were scattered, then the earth, the continents were divided. It was caused by continental movement due to a massive worldwide earthquake called an orogeny by geologists. And not only that, the ocean levels also rose, covering parts of the dry land, which were dry at that time. At that time, the Middle East was, by the way, I discussed this in my book, and that was Mysteries of History Revealed. In this book right here, I do documentation on that. And this is Mysteries of History Revealed Part 1. And then I have Mysteries of History Revealed Part 2, which is goes more into depth on the Nephilim and their history, clear up to the Illuminati and New World Order of today, and they're descendants of the fallen angels, partially. At the time, the Middle East was tropical and rarely watered by heavy rains. Regularly watered by heavy rains. That's called the Pluvial period, and I heard about that in archaeology. This set up suitable and reachable environments for dinosaurs and other tropical creatures to fill. And by the way, these dinosaurs are found with reeds, and the word used, and I can't think of it right now, reeds, and these same reeds are found with dinosaur fossils. And also, these dinosaurs that we see today are in areas where these reeds grow. And the Bible refers to him laying down the reeds and fens. Various clues, such as dinosaur fossils buried alongside tropical plant fossils and the swampy setting that God describes for behemoths in Job 40, indicate many dinosaurs lived in very wet habitats. And by the way, Mochilium bembe is often seen in a water habitat near Lake Telly. This worldwide dinosaur migration happened only thousands of years ago, when there was only one continent. They could walk from one to the other. Adding the Bible's time-stamp events from the fall of Jerusalem in 587 back to the flood yields a date for the flood either near 3168 or 2518 BC. I say that's incorrect. That's too old. Depending on manuscript variations, the most reliable is User's, which places it 2348 BC. So I don't go along with Brian Thomas on this. How long did dinosaurs live after the flood? Why are they not living today? Well, I believe they are. In fact, when the millennium comes, dinosaurs will come back, but they'll be harmless. Most dinosaurs were harmless. Although creatures like dinosaurs scattered across the Earth's surface after the flood, the first generations of people determined to rebel against God's command to fill the earth under Nimrod. Instead, they built a Tower of Babel. Actually, it wasn't a tower, it was called a ziggurat. It was a step pyramid, identical to those seen in the Middle East today in ruins, as well as those in South America, because they migrated from there, and they were the Phoenicians about 4,000 years ago. Were scattered from Babel about somewhere around 1900 BC, 350 years after the flood. Remained in its growing city, Babel. In response, God supernaturally compelled them to disperse by confounding their languages. When families eventually migrated to far-flung places, they encountered the dinosaurs that had been there for centuries. writings, depictions, legends, and cave drawings from people groups across the globe memorialize many of those encounters. As humans built the post-flood Earth, dinosaur numbers would have dwindled due to their hunting and loss of habitat as the Ice Age began. And that's why they were dwindling, because of the coming Ice Age, which changed their environment. However, they do survive today in some very isolated tropical areas. And when they are found, the scientists don't want to find them, the evolutionists, because that would contradict their theory. And they were also, the Bible says that Nimrod, otherwise known as Gilgamesh, was hunting them. And by the way, Gilgamesh is the one that confronts what the description of a carnotasaur. The changing climate alone may have ultimately rendered the Earth inhospitable to many of these creatures. It did, both food-wise, food chains, and also weather, eventually leading to their extinction, possible extinction. I believe dinosaurs will be back, because God created them, and it'll be just like the Garden of Eden, so they'll be back, leading to their extinction. In fact, I believe that the serpent that Eve spoke to was probably a sauropod dinosaur, probably the same one as Behemoth. But that's speculation, it's theory. But it says she talked to a serpent. It's not necessarily a snake. But in those days, it's possible that people could actually, that animals could actually talk. Maybe that was part of the curse, where they can't talk anymore, because animals are extremely smart. The only thing they don't have, they're not created in God's image, so they don't have the creative abilities. They only do things the same way through instinct, leading to their extinction. Even so, dinosaurs must have been living at least within the last several centuries, judging by the many tales of human encounters with them. The sheer number of names given to dragons or dinosaurs worldwide builds a strong argument that dragon legends reflect encounters with real creatures. Most languages, either in written or spoken form, have their own unique terms. The word dragon here doesn't necessarily refer to the popular image of a bulky, fire-breathing reptile that somehow flies with tiny wings. Rather, it can mean one of the many kinds of post-flood dinosaurs or even flying reptiles. Some languages still use words like those shown in this table. Wikipedia lists many more dragon names, at least some of which probably refer to actual giant reptiles, including dinosaurs, or even large animals. There was huge, like the Titanotheres, and some of these, one of these rhinoceros was actually the size of a sauropod dinosaur. It was gigantic. A man's head would come up to its knee. And those were post-flood animals that are found in the White River Formation in Badlands of South Dakota. I've been there, and it's very interesting. There are no dinosaurs there, but the massive scale of the cataclysm shows that it was almost the same as the Noachian flood. But the difference is it's mostly rhyolite, and that's why it has a pinkish hue to it, which is unlike the dinosaur sites like the Morrison Formation. It's usually kind of rainbow colors, but they don't have this pinkish look. They are usually kind of gray, green, red, orange. When you see that, you know that's the Morrison Formation of volcanic ash, varying degrees of minerals in it from the volcanic eruptions and the mud flows. Ancient, and they're filled with a lot of silica, which is what fossilizes or permineralizes the fossil bones and hard parts usually, and seals in soft parts of the animal, the soft tissue. Things are preserved inside this glass. Quartz is a form of glass. Ancient historians describe dragons as real living creatures, listing them right alongside their descriptions of other creatures familiar to today's readers. For example, in his book, Natural History, written in approximately 78 AD, Pliny the Elder, I'm glad he says AD and not BP. Pliny the Elder wrote that, quote, "It is India which produces the largest elephants as well as the dragon, and the dragon is itself of such enormous size as to envelop the elephant in its folds." There's no other animal that he could be describing. In those days, they didn't know anything about fossils. And if they did, they'd just see both fragments of bone. They would never recognize what it is. In fact, they probably thought they were elephants. In fact, I think they did. In fact, they thought the post-flood Pleistocene animals were elephants. Of course, they weren't. During that same era, Flavius Philostratus wrote, quote, "The whole of India is girt with dragons of enormous size, for not only the marshes are full of them," see, marshes again, showing this is a genuine account, "but the mountains as well, and there is not a single ridge without one. Now the marsh kind are sluggish in their habitats, and are 30 cubits long, and they have no crest standing up on their heads." End quote. Such accounts sprinkled the pages of history. Alexander the Great wrote of a large serpent his army encountered during one of their conquering excursions. The explorer Marco Polo also described one in his logbooks, although these probably referred to giant snakes and not dragons. They illustrate that giant reptiles once lived where they are long gone today. Bill Cooper's book, After the Flood, describes similar accounts from Europe. Cooper relayed a report written in 1484 by England's first printer, William Caxton, a singular creature. Quote, "About the marshes of Italy, within a meadow, was sometime a serpent of wonderful and right marvelous greatness, right hideous and fearful. For first he had a head greater than the head of a calf." Sounds like a theropod, like a T-Rex, or a Dilophosaur, or a Carnotasaur, and many other animals, Allosaurus. Secondly, he had a neck greater than the length of an ass, and his body made after the likeness of a dog, and his tail was wonderfully great, thick and long without comparison with any other. And actually, it sounds more like this one sounds more like a sauropod, a quadruped walking on all four legs, standing upright, not like reptiles today. The creature thus described matches Job's behemoth, which had a tail like a cedar, lived in a marsh where it ate reeds. Reeds, the same ones that are found in the dinosaur fossils. And I found some too. I think it was Pyramid Lake, paleo trip I went on. And as the first of the ways of God was obviously quite large, people groups that did not maintain written records nevertheless retained the traditions of dragon encounters. They described the dragon's habitats and habits, and provided specific names for dragons and the long-dead heroes who vanquished them, like Nimrod, Gilgamesh. He was called the Mighty Hunter because he hunted dragons. Towns and hillside, and by the way, the mascot of Babel was a dragon. You guessed it. And it's the same one that the Chinese have, the Chinese dragon. Ponds across Europe still have old dragon names, such as Drachenfels Castle, and the town of Worms in Germany, and Grindelwald in Switzerland, and Dragonhoard near Garsington, plus the Peak District's Grindelford in England, and many others. But even more evidence shows that early peoples encountered dinosaurs. Carvings, sculptures, bas-reliefs, paintings, mosaics, tapestries, sculptures, pictographs, petroglyphs, and all over the world depict dragons, and many of them look like specific dinosaurs. Some of telling features that help identify these images as dinosaurian include horns, spiky skin, flaps along the spine called dermal frills, long tails, long necks, large teeth, and perhaps most importantly, legs that went straight down from the body, where they walked like a cow or a horse. Today's walking reptiles, like crocodiles and lizards, have legs that extend out from the sides of the body, then angle down to the ground at the elbows or knees. In other words, tetrapod. That's the way lizards walk. Lizards are not dinosaurs. Some people say, oh, a dinosaur is just a large lizard. No, they're an entirely different animal. Dinosaur reptile, in fact, they act more like mammals. Dinosaur reptiles' legs extended down just as dozens of genuine ancient depictions show. Evolutionists assert that such dinosaur-looking artifacts are fakes. However, this objection doesn't result from a rigorous analysis of the data. Instead, it stems from an argument that goes like this. Circular reasoning. Quote, dinosaurs died millions of years before man evolved, making it impossible for ancient man to know what dinosaurs looked like. Therefore, this artifact must be a fraud. End case. I rest my case. Well, number one, there's no evidence for evolution. There's no evidence for millions of years. In fact, the radioactive methods are been shown to be a fraud, complete fraud, except for carbon-14, which is very inaccurate too, but it does prove one thing, that dinosaurs have carbon-14 in them when they shouldn't have any, and it proves they're thousands of years old. And then also the dinosaur soft tissue, and cells and blood vessels and remains of blood and DNA and collagen and osteocytes in bones, which are bone cells, all prove that they're thousands of years old as well. This kind of argument takes as true that the very evolutionary history that the artifacts challenge, ignoring evidence often leads to wrong conclusions, because you're selecting what you believe and ignoring contradictory evidence, and that's not science. That's propaganda. That's science fiction. Most scientists are actually being paid to produce science fiction. Many scientists are actually doing fraudulent research, like those who are working for the government and are saying that the global warming is real. And it's not on a pause and all this complete garbage, absolute lies, proven to be fraudulent. And they're defrauding the American people. They should be put in jail. They should be tried for this. The late cosmologist and atheist Carl Sagan considered the historical evidence for dragons as a serious enough threat to evolutionary history that he tried to explain them away in his book 1977, The Dragons of Eden. In it, he speculated that unknown human ancestor primates may have encountered dinosaurs millions of years ago. Supposedly the memories of those terrifying encounters so deeply traumatized those primates that they left indelible, heritable stamps in their genes. Eons later, ancient ape-like human descendants drew dinosaur look-alike pictures from those inherited memories. But no scientific evidence whatsoever suggests that memories can be genetically inherited. Knowing this, many scientists at the time shunned Sagan's, I should say, I should change my tone here because he ended the quote there. Knowing this, many scientists at the time shunned Sagan's unscientific speculation, but it is equally unscientific for those same scientists to assert that myriad of dragon legends, all reptiles, kind of strange coincidence, all large, are all fraudulent without even investigating the historical evidence. If it contradicts our theory, forget the evidence. If the Bible is correct, and it is, that representatives of all land-dwelling, air-breathing creatures were on the ark, and if it is correct in describing an Ice Age dinosaur in the book of Job, no, actually this was a pre-Ice Age, Brian Thomas, this was a pre-Ice Age dinosaur after the flood, excuse me, then it makes sense to infer that people encountered and rid themselves, like Nimrod did, of their cities. And that could be why China built the Great Wall. Maybe more than just human enemies. The threatening and fearsome reptiles, to get rid of the threatening and fearsome reptiles during the centuries after the flood, they left us as dragon legends, written, spoken, painted, carved, and virtually every ancient culture. Genuine dinosaur encounters best explain the sheer number of dragon descriptions and their similarities across space and time. Very good article, Brian Thomas, but not entirely accurate. Now this is I think it's a picture of a dinosaur, and when they first found this animal, they found teeth. And they're these round teeth because this animal used to eat clams and things under the water. And he has a big, when they found the skeleton finally, they just found teeth for a long time. In fact, they found so many, you can buy them very cheap in mineral shops. This animal has a flap on his back. He was bipedal, he was aquatic, and he's called the teeth were called Carcharodontosaurus because he was like a crocodile, because he had teeth like a crocodile, kind of rounded teeth. Unlike the theropod dinosaurs, the T-Rex and so forth, they have serrated teeth that are slightly curved, and they have a root, and they have serrations on the inner surface. And here's a picture of the dinosaur. Anyway, I'll see you. I'm the editor of Biblical Science News, and you can see that at the Biblical Science News blogspot.com. And I write several articles a day. And I've also published 2 books, and I also have a website to sell my books. I'll put all the information with this video in written form. This is Gatorade. It's getting hot, so see you next time.